hello there.
Hey!
Hey! Happy Sunday!
Woo!
Oh my gosh, it's Sunday. We're here. We're here when we're supposed to be. What do you mean we're here when we're supposed to be? We're always here when we're supposed to be. Except for that. Except, man, the allergies today. What is going on? Doesn't matter. That's not going to stop us from talking to you, talking about.
Beam me up, snotty.
Yes. Talking about all the things. We're going to make this quick. We're going to make this a quick episode. Every time I say that, it's like 60 minutes of 5 minutes. But no, this time we're going to try to make it quick, give you just all the good, juicy content. We're glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. Let me refresh my screen over here because I have to keep an eye on the chat, my favorite part of the show. All right, looking good. And Jim is in the chat already. Excellent. Where is my chat on Facebook? Sorry about that, folks. As I say, allergies this week. So, not my usual brilliant self. I think it knocked a digit off of my IQ. But I want to talk anyway. Today is Sunday, June 19th, 2022, the 170th day of this, your best year yet. Now, there's 170 days into the year. You have 195 days left. Now, that sounds like more days left than we started with, or that we've used so far, but I'll tell you what, it's only 2 days until summer. Now, I know for a lot of us, summer's already started. We had great weather. We had crazy weather this week.
Yes.
A heat wave across the United States of America. Excuse me a second. But I'm telling you, time is moving. Time is running. The infinite now is going to last only so long, so make sure you're taking advantage. 189 days until Christmas, 134 days until Halloween. Enjoy this summer. Make it maximally awesome. When summer starts in 2 days, because you have 4 seasons, there's only 3 months of it. That's why I hope you've already been having a great summer so far, even though it's not summer yet. On this date, June 19th, Union soldiers arrive in Galveston, Texas, with news that the Civil War was over and slavery in the United States was abolished in what is now known as Juneteenth. Now, this is...
Happy Juneteenth!
This is kind of crazy.
Yeah?
Yeah. 1865. Union soldiers arrive in Galveston with the news that the Civil War is over, slavery in the United States is abolished. Now, you don't have social media in 1865. You don't even, this is weird, but believe it or not, you don't have the internet.
Oh, really?
But you don't even have telephones. You don't even have coast-to-coast telegraph service.
You have Pony Express.
It's the weirdest thing. Despite the fact that President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation was issued more than 2 years earlier on January 1st, 1863, a lack of Union troops in the rebel state of Texas made the order difficult to enforce. Some historians blame the lapse in time on poor communication. Others believe Texas slave owners purposely withheld the information. But upon arrival and landing of the Union soldiers, General Gordon Granger announced General Order Number 3. Quote, "The people of Texas are informed in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States. All slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. And the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freed men are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere." Now,
so this is not employment at will then?
It is employment at will.
Oh, it is? Or
they're simply being told or warned against what used to be called vagrancy. The kind of homelessness that you now see, especially endemic in the West Coast, Oregon, Washington, and especially California, but nationwide in a lot of big cities, used to be illegal. Vagrancy used to be illegal. It's funny, there are films like Rambo, First Blood, that don't even make a lot of sense right now, because you've got this guy, tough guy, former military, vet. And he's walking through a small town, and the small town people are like, yeah, you better just keep going. Or think about when we were watching The A-Team, and how many of those episodes had these small redneck towns, and all you had to do was show up in this small redneck town without a great deal of money in your pocket, and they'd put you in jail for vagrancy.
Wow.
For being a bum. For being homeless. Craziest thing. So when they freed 250,000 enslaved people, they were given the message to stay and work for your owner.
God,
and yet,
terrible.
on that day, despite the message, many left the state of Texas immediately and headed north or to nearby states in search of family members who had been taken to other regions during slavery. For many African Americans, June 19th, today, is considered an Independence Day. Now, before 2021, nearly all 50 states had recognized Juneteenth as a state holiday. Now, I hate neologisms as much as the next guy, so when somebody tries to put a new word out there and says, you have to accept this, I have as much resistance in it, but I love this. I absolutely love this. It was finally official this year. June 17th, 2021, President Biden, somebody named Biden is our president right now.
Okay.
President Biden signed legislation officially declaring it a federal holiday. Actually, I have to give props to President Biden, who I have no love for. I have nothing for. But here's the thing. I saw the coolest thing. He fell off his bicycle. Okay, you think, what do you mean he fell off his bicycle? He's a doddering old fool. He falls off everything. But when you watch this video, you realize Joe Biden rides a bicycle.
Yes, he does.
He actually rides. He's a rider. He's a cyclist. And I'm like, well, that's cool, because, I'm a bike rider. Again, I'm no fan of Joe Biden, but, if you look for videos of him actually saying intelligent things and unscripted, he does do that. And if you look for videos of him riding a bike and not falling off, you can find those too. So whatever your criticisms of Joe Biden, and mine are endless, he's not the doddering old fool that
I
the
would
clips
say...
would suit. I mean, you can find a clip of him saying 40 stupid things in a row. But you know how easy it is to find clips of Donald Trump saying 40 stupid things in a row? Or Barack Obama saying 40 stupid things in a row?
But for the record, with Joe Biden, everybody needs to remember his past with regard to how he supported, he supported the war on drugs, and he supported, what's that one? Where basically if somebody pulls you over and you have some cash in your car.
Asset forfeiture?
Yeah, civil asset forfeiture.
He's the worst.
He's
worse than that.
And I should say this, even though he said, Juneteenth is now a holiday, which is great.
It already was.
It already was. He really did not do any favors for the African American community.
No.
At all.
Not at all.
So, just for the record.
Not at all. If there was anything that could be done for them, and as a capitalist, I think the best thing to do for any community is leave them the hell alone.
Yeah.
But if there was anything that could have been done for them, it would have been the exact opposite of everything that Joe Biden did.
Yes.
I just thought it was cool to see him fall off a bike. I mean, it was cool to see him on a bike.
And live.
Yes, and live to tell the tale. Actually, he fell off the bike. It looked really bad when he fell off. Like he just fell on his whomp onto concrete. But his first words were, I'm good. So, it's hard to find anything you can give Joe Biden props for, because any kind of compliments aren't appropriate or proper or props. So I'm going with that. Anyway, the point is, happy Juneteenth. If any of you are bristling at every time there's a new holiday, and especially if somebody from the left, I'm holding up the air quotes, puts that holiday out there, just lighten up. Look at the history. This is a day to celebrate. Also, June 19th, Carole King has her first #1 hit as a performer with the double-sided hit, It's Too Late, and I Feel the Earth Move. I feel the earth move under my feet. You know the song. You all know the music. The crazy thing about Carole King, which I didn't know until, I found out years after she was famous. Carole King began her career in music as a young newlywed and college graduate do you mean a young newlywed and college graduate? And you learn the story, it all makes sense. Carole King began her career in music as a young newlywed and college graduate working a 9 to 5 shift alongside her then husband, Jerry Goffin, in Don Kirshner's songwriting factory, Alden Music. And we all know, well, we don't all know. Some of us eventually learned about the Brill Building, where composers would work 9 to 5 at a desk, writing music the way some people work a factory job. Don Kirshner, we knew him as, the Midnight Special and all those music shows and the man behind the scenes of a lot. But he had a songwriting factory. But Carole King, he was there working in a cubicle with a piano, staff paper, and tape recorder. I just love this idea of a desk job songwriter. That she wrote her first hit song, the Shirelles' Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow.
Oh, really? Huh.
This is Carole King wrote all this stuff before you ever heard of her as a performer. Her second and third hit songs, the Drifters' Some Kind of Wonderful. Of course, as a rocker, I think of that as when Grand Funk Railroad redid it. And Bobby V's Take Good Care of My Baby. She wrote all of this stuff.
Really?
Her 14th and 17th hit songs, the Chiffons' One Fine Day, Herman's Hermits, Something Tells Me I'm Into Something Good.
Really?
And none of these bands wrote those songs. This is all Carole King. And her husband, Jerry Goffin,
Wow.
was co-writer on a lot of these. It was not until 10 years after her songwriting breakthrough, however, that Carole King finally fulfilled her lifelong dream of having her own hit record as both singer and songwriter. On June 19th, this day in 1971, she earned her first #1 single as a performer with the double-sided hit, It's Too Late and I Feel the Earth Move. So happy birthday to Carole King. Love, love, love that. And she is still with us. Who is not still with us is Blaise Pascal. I've talked about Blaise Pascal before. He was born in 1623. And so he's not still with us. Actually, Blaise Pascal died young. He did not live very long. He was 39 years old. But it was a big 39 years. He was a child prodigy who was educated by his father. Pascal's earliest mathematical work was on conic sections. He wrote a significant treatise on the subject of projective geometry at the age of 16. Like his contemporary, René Descartes, Pascal was also a pioneer in the natural and applied sciences, as well as philosophy. Pascal wrote in defense of the scientific method and produced several controversial results. This is great. Here, Pascal's work was so precocious that René Descartes was convinced that Pascal's father had written it. When assured by Mersenne, another mathematician, that it was indeed the product of the son and not the father, Descartes dismissed it with a sniff. I do not find it strange that he has offered demonstrations about conics, more appropriate than those of the ancients. But other matters related to this subject can be proposed that would scarcely occur to a 16-year-old. See, Blaise Pascal, I've talked about Blaise Pascal in the context of, for example, Pascal's wager, and my answer to Pascal's wager, which we've discussed on previous episodes and I won't get into because I'm kind of brain dead on allergy meds. We'll get into that too. But Pascal was a genuine child prodigy and a brilliant scientist, a brilliant mathematician, even if I disagree with some of his philosophical conclusions. And it made me think of, just thinking about Carole King and her amazing career and young hits, but 10 years later she finally becomes a performer. Blaise Pascal is writing the kind of papers nobody believes are written by a 16-year-old. But it makes me think of, I lost my link here. That's okay. I'll get there. It makes me think of Nandi Bushell.
Yes.
Nandi Bushell is fun. Nandi Bushell is one of these YouTube sensations, a young kid who became very proficient at a musical instrument at a very young age. And in her case, it was playing drums along with rock and roll music. And she would post videos as a 9-year-old girl of her sitting at the drum kit And there's more than one. These child prodigies on YouTube. What's fun about Nandy, though, and you see her, the little tiny girl with the big headphones on, the earmuffs, because she's a 9-year-old girl and her parents don't want her to ruin her hearing playing drums, is she would do these videos, and at one point she challenged Dave Grohl. Now, we've talked about Dave Grohl before. Dave Grohl is the coolest guy in rock music. He's just the best guy in the world.
He is.
The nicest guy, the most gregarious guy, gets involved in all these different projects with all these other bands and other people and other organizations. And Nandy Bushell, a 9-year-old in Ipswich, England, the cutest little African-American girl living in England. African-English girl.
English girl.
I don't know. We usually
British?
just say a black girl, but that sounds kind of wrong now.
No idea.
She's the cutest little girl with the little double fro. And
she's so cute and pretty. I'll just say that.
And smart and charming.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of
talented.
It reminds me of Alma Deutscher, who is a classical musician, but she was brilliant, and she's like Mozart. She's writing piano concertos or pieces at 6 years old. So Nandy challenges Dave Grohl to a drum-off. If you know Dave Grohl as the lead singer and guitar player of Foo Fighters, you might not remember that he was also the drummer in the band Nirvana. So not only is he a good guitar player and a great singer, he's a great drummer, and used to be the drummer in Nirvana. When he started Foo Fighters, he got a different drummer. Eventually, that drummer was replaced and then replaced again by Taylor Hawkins, who unfortunately we just lost at the age of 50, passed away. And that's part of the story because Dave Grohl accepts the drum-off challenge. And it's all done over the internet and YouTube videos. Nandy Bushell posts a video. Dave Grohl posts a video and says, well, okay, beat this. She answering video, and Dave Grohl declares, you win. You are the better drummer, little 9-year-old girl. So last fall, she's now 11 years old, the Foo Fighters go to England, and they invite Nandy Bushell to come up on stage, play drums to their hit song Everlong. Taylor Hawkins just goes off the drum kit. He just stands in the back of the stage. Because this little girl, this tiny little girl, is able to play, and again, not something gentle and nice, but hard rock music like Foo Fighters. And the end of the story, and the reason I mention it in the context of child prodigies like Blaise Pascal, is that this year Foo Fighters have been invited. They're playing Wembley. They're scheduled to play at Wembley Arena. The stadium, 100,000 people in this place. Queen did their big Live Aid, enormous venue. The Foo Fighters doesn't have a drummer. Their drummer just passed away, and they haven't replaced him yet. And they canceled all their concerts because they don't have a drummer. So what do? It was just announced in the news today. They're playing the Wembley Stadium gig with Nandy Bushell as their drummer. This incredible group of musicians led by this incredible guy, the nicest guy in rock music, is going to play Wembley Stadium with an 11-year-old drummer. I just love that story. It is heartwarming. And today is June 19th.
Yeah,
and it's a heartwarming day.
And I got to say, so Nandy Bushell, she was born in South Africa of Zulu descent.
Wow.
And her and her family moved
to Ipswich, UK. I did not know that she was born in Africa.
When she was very young. And so she's South African British. I don't know.
Amazing.
She's British.
Just amazing.
She's Ipswichian.
Ipswichian, yes.
She's a genius, actually.
I just love that. Pardon the sniffles here. As I mentioned, it's a bad allergy day. Last time I had a really bad allergy day on a Sunday, I actually canceled this show. We didn't do it. And I thought,
it's
let's
not too bad today, actually.
Because I don't have much to say. I just love a few of these stories here.
Back to Nandy Bushell. By the way, all your show notes are on Facebook. We have a question in the YouTube chat.
Okay.
So just go to Robert's page and you'll find all that stuff there.
Yeah, the show notes haven't been posted until after. They're not usually posted until after the show.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Now, is there going to be
I'll post a copy of them right now in case anybody wants to see that.
Okay, good. So now there's a video that Robert was circulating about with Nandy Bushell when she was 11. This was last year. And
that's
played the one.
That's the one where she played the one song, right?
The one song, Everlong, I think it's called.
Yep.
And she was really great, and it was so freaking amazing because if anybody follows music news, contemporary music news. Taylor Hawkins passed away. And in this video, it just, oh gosh, it just chokes me up. So after she gets done playing, she gets out from the drums, and she just has both of her arms in the air, and she's just exultant.
She's loving it.
And Dave Grohl is just like, I can't believe this is the best thing ever. And
then, it's the end of the show, so they're all lined up, and they do the group bow.
But before that, no, actually, right after that, Taylor Hawkins, the drummer, who recently passed away, gives her a fist bump, and then bestows kind of like this,
hands her the drumsticks.
And
says, throw them out in the crowd. Now, the guitarists at the end of a show, and you've seen this at rock concerts, they're tossing out their guitar picks as souvenirs. People are trying to catch them, yay! And the drummer will often throw out his drumsticks. What? Don't get a drumstick in the eye, but everybody knows that's going to happen. And the drummer will throw out his drumsticks as souvenirs, and whoever's lucky catches one, somebody catches the other one. So yeah, you're right. Taylor Hawkins hands her the drumsticks and then makes the motion with his hand, and she gets it. So she takes the drumstick. Well, you could tell the story, but she takes the drumstick and she throws it out into the crowd. And she's still got one in her hand.
Yeah.
And Taylor Hawkins makes the motion again, throw the other drumstick. And she says, brings him down to where she can talk in his ear. And he smiles and he looks at her and he says, like, okay. Yeah. And they walk off stage, and you can tell what she was saying is, I want to keep this one.
Right. Yeah, it was just so sweet, and it was like he was kind of bestowing the drumsticks to her, kind of handing off the torch, kind of. I mean, it's sad that he passed away, but it's just so touching at the very end of this video. And of course, now she's going to be touring, doing one big show, an hour and a half long set with them on drums. So fantastic.
Love that. I will not be going to Wembley to see it. I'm not even a big Foo Fighters fan. I just love these guys. They're just good. Dave Grohl is the best guy in rock and roll.
Solidly good. There were actually, we were talking about this. There are people who I would say are like solidly good people in show business. Two of which I actually talked about with Robert earlier this morning. Cyndi Lauper.
Mm-hmm.
Solidly good person, and Gloria Estefan of the Miami Sound Machine, and now she's acting in some roles and everything, and I just find them to be the most wholesome and formidable and like or powerful, just powerful people who are also very good.
And they're not detached.
Yeah.
Watching the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial reminds you that you can be detached. You can be in such a rarefied atmosphere where there's no guardrails. There's no reality. There's nothing telling you, oh yeah, you need to be virtuous. You need to be good to people. You need to be reality-based.
Right.
No, because there's nobody ever telling these folks no. And that ends up doing certain people in.
Yeah.
Even the Taylor Hawkins story is a genuinely good guy, but he was 50 years old, and just like we saw with Prince, and arguably with some other musicians, the doctors figure out, well, what did him in? Well, it looks like it was this combination of, and then, drugs and prescription drugs and all. It doesn't seem like it was one thing. It was just everything they did to have to continue to perform at the same level they did when they were 25, now that they're 50 or 55 years old. There are other actors and musicians where it's not just, oh yeah, they probably did a little too much performance enhancement, but that they completely lose track. Nobody's going to tell, I shouldn't pick on Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, but nobody's going to tell them, you need to be decent people.
Right.
Well, they are decent people. Yeah. Johnny Depp goes to hospitals, he talks to kids, and he does charity things. But there are other times when there are just no guardrails on this guy, and he can act any way he wants and get away with it, more or less. And I just love to see people like Dave Grohl and even Taylor Hawkins when he was still with us, just deeply, genuinely good people.
Yeah. Right.
Just solid.
Yes. Solidly good.
I just love that. And what better day to praise good, decent, solid people, because it is June 19th. It's not June 19th. It's the third Sunday in June, which happens to be June 19th. So it's Father's Day in the United States and many countries around the world. They're celebrated a little differently in different places. In the U.S., today is Father's Day, most other places too. a celebration honoring people's fathers and celebrating the fatherhood, paternal bonds, and the influence of fathers in society. Interesting, it was first proposed by Sonora Dodd in Spokane, Washington in 1909. Now, Father's Day has been celebrated since the Middle Ages, but we didn't have a specific date, and it wasn't a national holiday. And founded in Spokane, Washington at the YMCA. Does anybody even know what YMCA stands for anymore?
Young Men's Christian Association?
It's interesting because the YMCA is no longer men's only.
Right.
And it's no longer particularly Christian. I mean, it is in the way the Salvation Army is.
Right.
In that it is a Christian organization, but that's kind of irrelevant. If you're dealing with the Salvation Army, if you're getting help from them, or if you're donating things, it's not a Christy kind of thing. neither is the YMCA anymore. But anyway, Father's Day, yes, Spokane, Washington, YMCA, 1910, Sonora Smart Dodd. Who was born in Arkansas. I go from allergies to hiccups. Excuse me a second.
Can I read something?
Yes. You can read the highlighted part in yellow there.
Okay, here and here.
Well, I've already read that part. We are here. I guess we're there.
It did not have much success initially, Father's Day.
Okay.
Americans resisted the holiday at first, perceiving it was as just an attempt by merchants. Oh, the Hallmark.
See, we've talked about Hallmark holidays before.
To replicate the commercial success of Mother's Day.
See, we had Mother's Day.
And newspapers frequently featured cynical and sarcastic attacks and jokes.
It's hard to imagine, even in 1910, that we were that anti-commercial, that we're like, Father's Day is just a way for companies to make more money selling candy and greeting cards,
yes.
neckties and handkerchiefs.
A bill to accord national recognition of the holiday was introduced in Congress in 1913. 1916, President Wilson, went to Spokane to speak in a Father's Day celebration and wanted to make it official, but Congress resisted, fearing it would become commercialized. Oh, okay. 1966, President Johnson issued the first presidential proclamation honoring fathers, designating the third Sunday in June as Father's Day. 6 years later, the day was made a permanent national holiday when President Nixon signed it into law in 1972. It's too bad all those crummy presidents had anything to do with this, but there it is. Anyway, that doesn't matter. I mean, the thing is that you get to, despite what is codified into being a holiday in the United States, you get to choose which holidays you want to celebrate. And we certainly celebrate Robert for being a wonderful father. My stepdaughter.
Yes. My daughter took us out to breakfast. Not just me, but all of us out to breakfast.
Yes.
And
got a free meal.
Which is better than a handkerchief. Because I've got my own handkerchiefs. But free breakfast is a beautiful thing. Since you've been reading from this note on Father's Day, I've been looking at the chat, and oh my gosh, I've missed a lot of very funny stuff in here. Mm-hmm. First of all, Sharon Katz is in the chat, and I'm going to guess it's probably not Sharon.
It's Stephen.
I'm going to guess that Stephen is using Sharon's computer.
Yes.
And there's some. Well, let me go back to the beginning real quick here, because I don't have a lot of content today other than the fact that, hi gang, I have allergies, but Sharon/Stephen asks, I asked, how do you reconcile the idea that your elders need to be respected for their wisdom and the fact that they maintained slavery and created an anti-miscegenation law? And, the answer to that one is easy. Those can't be reconciled. So you don't respect those aspects of them. You respect everything about them that deserved respect. It's interesting that the same founding fathers who did not see fit or didn't consider it practical to end slavery with the passing of the Constitution are the same people who laid the groundwork for the ending of slavery. And without the Declaration of Independence, I don't think you would have seen it happen as quickly in the United States. We did have to go to war over it. Could it have been done sooner than that? I don't know the answer to that. But if you look at the history of slavery in other countries besides it's so easy to say, well, the United States and slavery, but it's an ahistorical question in a way. You have to look at the whole history and why was that happening at the time. It was not the obvious It wasn't as obvious then as it is now. And when you consider what other things people believed and believed in the sciences, in medicine, in cosmology, people were wrong about a lot of things in the 16 and 1700s. And I would have to do a whole episode on how I answer that, and what it is that I respect and what it is that I condemn about people like Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and the writing of the U.S. Constitution and what was possible at that time and what wasn't. But anyway, back to the chat here real quick, because Apollo Zeus says our current super chat amount is $5,678.23. Every time he does that, I think it's hilarious because, of course, we don't have super chat. But if we did, I'm sure we would be seeing those kind of numbers. And so in that sense, Apollo Zeus is exactly right. What we need to do in order to have a super chat, in order for YouTube to turn on that feature, is we need to have 1,000 subscribers. And we are only 739 subscribers short of that.
Yep.
So if you like the show and share the show, probably by next week it'll be there. So like and share, do that, and in the meantime, that's very funny.
Yes, with your help, if in reality you actually share this link on YouTube to people on Twitter, to people on Facebook, to whoever else on other social channels, the subscribers will actually, and the view counts will actually increase like magic. So if you want to be part of the magic, that is what you do.
Yeah.
And if you like a particular part, you can say, 7 minutes, 23 seconds or whatever, they say something really wonderful and great, or however. And Mr.
and Mrs. Katz ask about, are you talking about Pascal's wager today?
It's not Mr. and Mrs.
I'm just having some fun with the screen name there, but my short answer to Pascal's wager, I've done a longer version of this, is Pascal's whole idea was you could believe in God or not, and God either exists or he doesn't. And he drew a grid. He did it 4 ways. He said, look, if you believe in God and God exists, great, because you'll live a pious life and you'll go to heaven. If you believe in God and he doesn't exist, well, you'll never know, and you've lost nothing because you've lived a pious life, which will probably be better than an impious life anyway. Now, if you don't believe in God and God doesn't exist, well, no harm, no foul. You've gained nothing.
You've lost your reality basis for morality. Of course, it really wasn't that.
You're giving away the punchline.
Oh, sorry.
Because there's a fourth possibility. And the fourth possibility is important. The fourth possibility on the grid, you all know what this is you don't believe in God, and it turns out there is one.
Mm-hmm.
And you are condemned to misery for all of eternity. Or if you're Jewish, you're not condemned to hell, you don't get to go to heaven. Mm-hmm. You do not get reunified with the God that is. Now, Andy gave away the punchline. First of all, Pascal, being a mathematician, did the math.
Yeah.
Even if you could have a better life on Earth for your 80 or 100 years, or in Pascal's time, your 60 or 40 years, it's a finite number of years. It's a finite number of pleasures, a finite good that you get from not believing, and there's no God. Whereas if there is a God, the eternal torment, the eternity of hell, or whatever you believe, depending on your religion, you're missing out on. That's not finite, it's infinite. And we all know from math that if you divide something finite by something infinite, the answer is 0. Or if you divide something finite by something infinite, the answer is infinite. So you can't compare the two. It's what you stand to lose is infinite, what you stand to gain is finite. Now, the problem is, with Pascal's wager, is that, well, it's twofold. The first problem, I always said the problem is, but the whole idea of God doesn't make any sense, and you can't make it make sense to yourself. So that means that that possibility of there being a God, which Pascal said might be even super, super small, but even if there's a chance, and the answer is there isn't a chance. But even more than that, my bigger objection to Pascal's wager is, and incidentally Pascal knew this and thought he had an answer, which he didn't. The real answer to Pascal's wager is, suppose you've figured out, oh yeah, the idea of God doesn't make any sense. It's an invalid concept. There are no supernatural beings, or the concepts of omnibenevolence or omnipresence or omniscience. None of those concepts actually make any sense because everything is finite. If you figured out there is no God, but you accept the wager, how do you believe something you don't believe? If you know that 2 and 2 is 4, how do you say, well, it would be prudent or expedient, or there would be rewards, or people would love me if I believed it was 5, so I'll believe it. How do you convince yourself that 2 and 2 is 5? No matter how motivated you are, no matter how many good things would happen, if you could convince yourself it's 5, how do you get yourself to believe something you know isn't true? That was always my objection to Pascal's wager when I was younger. And then I took Philosophy 101, University of Michigan Dearborn campus, which I never finished, college dropout. It's amazing I was as successful as I was dropping out of college. How do you get past that? It turns out what you learn in Philosophy 101, or maybe 201, is that Pascal had this covered. Remember, he was a prodigy. At 16, he was writing about conical sections, which I never could memorize any of the formulas for those.
Does that mean he was a conehead?
That's good. That's a good one. Pascal said this: I understand you don't believe, but what you do is you act as though you believe. You act in a pious manner, and you say nothing that defiles the name of God. You do all of the things you would do if you believed in God. And over the course of time, you will find your beliefs changing because the concept of God is so welcoming, and the wager is so, it encourages you to believe it. So, in other words, there's an answer to that. Brainwash yourself. Act long enough as if you believe it, and you'll convince yourself it's true, even though you know better.
How miserable.
Well, Pascal didn't use the word brainwash, but I don't know any other reason, any other way to convince yourself. Again, it's not something you don't know or you're not sure, but something that you know isn't true.
Well, I mean, not only are you kind of, you're shutting down your mind with regard to this one particular issue, but I mean, as somebody who is looking for a dogma or 10 commandments or whatever it is, some kind of list of ethical rules that you don't have to think about, that are not contextual, they're dogmatic, they're intrinsic, they're never changing, and you're just, you're shutting your mind off from thinking in so many different areas of your life. It's just poison. It's absolute poison. And yeah, that's
yep.
That's the thing about God, is that it's not just God or heaven and hell. It's how do you want to live your life on earth, and how do you want to actually guide yourself morally? What kind of morality do you want to have? Do you want something that's reality-based and in accordance with the nature of a human being? Or do you want some, woo?
At my age, I really go back to the woo because... And it's not just woo in that it's altruistic and self-sacrificial, and all that's bad enough. But what are you doing to your mind when you decide that you believe something that you don't even understand? Well, it can't be understood. What are you doing to your consciousness when you let that in, when you've got part of something that you've convinced yourself you believe is true, even though you don't know it's true? You don't even really know what it means. And I have conversations about religion. I always get hung up on, what do you mean when you say God? Oh, well, No, I don't. I've tried. I really don't get it. Is it an old man, gray beard, sitting in a chair? Well, no, we know it's not that. It's something that transcends. I love things that are transcendent, but that means they go from one level to another. What? I can't. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yes, I think there are worse things than just the morals of religion. So in that regard...
Yeah, I want to point something out. So Jason Adams of Objectivists Matters podcast.
That's just what I was about to ask.
Oh, gosh. Okay, well, he says, should I take the effort to call my old church and get unbaptized and excommunicated, or am I wasting valuable minutes of my life?
Let's see if you'll agree with me. What would your answer to that be?
I've always thought about that, actually, because I was raised Catholic, and this is why. Let me tell you why. If you are Catholic and you find yourself in a hospital bed in some hospital somewhere, that Catholic priest that's associated with that hospital, say, you might die or something like that, or you're close to death, or however, he's gonna come lurking around, creeping about. He's gonna creep on you. He's going to find your name on the list of registered Catholics, and he's going to come over to you, put his hand on your head and pray and all this stuff. And it is, I've seen this happen when a loved one didn't want this to happen, and it's the creepiest goddamn thing ever. I'm just going to say that. It is just disturbing. And that's not something I want. So I am actually considering contacting the Catholic Church and saying, take me off your list, please.
I'm no longer a catholic.
Or cataholic.
The thing that I would do,
right.
my answer to that would be, because this is necessarily going to be an issue of practicality, I don't think there's any sanction in having your name on some list that you don't care about, with a bunch of people you don't care about. The real question is, what are the pros and what are the cons? Now, I can tell you there were issues when my daughter was born, because we were at a hospital associated with Catholicism, Catholic hospital, St. Mary's. And there were certain limitations in regard to what we were allowed to do, because I'm not a Catholic. And so you got to weigh that out. And I would do it. I would take a piece of paper, pros, cons, write them down. But I wouldn't care too much that there's an organization out there that still considers you one of theirs. I don't think it matters. I don't think it's any particular sanction. They know that half the people on that list aren't religious anymore anyway. So really it's a question of, is there anything in it for you? Then you can decide, okay, is it worth the amount of time that it would take? Or, again, if it's kind of just emotionally, if it's something that gives you the heebie-jeebies, you're like, I loathe those people. I don't want to be on any of their paperwork. Maybe it's worth an afternoon to do that. But write it out. Just write it out on a piece of paper. Get it out of your own head, down on paper. It's easier to look at it objectively and say, yeah, this is what I want to do, which is often my advice. He goes on to say, my mom actually did get excommunicated in Japan for dating outside of marriage. See, it's the kind of thing we ran into at the hospital, 34 years ago. Just crazy stuff that you think nobody believes in anymore, and then you find out that church that used to preach that thing, they still believe it. It's the craziest thing. But be that as it may, what else have we got going on in here? Good conversations now about religion. But I don't know that we have any more questions.
Yeah, our friend Andrew is on the Facebook chat. So.
Excellent. We had a good chat
Andrew.
with him this afternoon. Glad to see you here, Andrew. Jim is in and says, have a cigarette, Robert. That might help. That might help with my allergies and get me back my deep voice. Or I could, it wouldn't be deep for long. Eventually it would be the Stevie Nicks voice. Welcome to 5 Minutes. So you don't want that.
No.
Yes. I'm just looking real quick here to see if there were any other questions that I missed. Now, we were still at the beginning of the show, which is funny considering the time. The only thing I didn't get to, the only two things I didn't get to. First of all, happy birthday to Ann Wilson.
Oh.
June 19th is Ann Wilson of Heart. Great singer, Ann Wilson. She's 72 years old, still performing.
Excellent.
With Heart, with her sister Nancy Wilson. And the band has had members come and go. To me, they were really in their heyday in the 1970s with albums like Little Queen, which had the song Barracuda, which is the greatest song by Heart, flat out. If you disagree, it's okay. You're allowed to be wrong. It also had some other favorites of mine, songs like Love Alive, which was not a big hit, but was a great song. So the album any of those 1970s albums by Heart were just magnificent. Before they became a pop band in the 80s, and they're great pop rock songs. But no, the original days were the best. And finally, what are we listening to this week? And I bring this one up, first of all, because, of course, I posted a link to the video by Nandy Bushell at the Forum in Los Angeles playing Everlong with Foo Fighters. But also, on Thursday, we did an episode called Joy, Sorrow, Love, Death, and the Infinite Now. And I talked about a book by Susan Cain called Bittersweet. And I think that's an episode worth listening to. If you haven't seen it, haven't heard it yet, we talked about this book where Susan Cain gets into the value of bittersweet experiences. And she's not just talking about dark chocolate, although that does come up in the conversation. But as a philosophy student, as an objectivist, you may have noticed I'm very much about positivity and benevolence and joy.
Well, that's earned, not faked. I should say that.
But we have done on this show and on the Thursday show, we have done whole episodes on sadness.
Yeah.
We did a show called Tears of Splendor, in which we encouraged you to share with us the things that get you choked up, positive experiences, value experiences, but bittersweet, or things that bring a tear to the eye.
Like music, for instance.
So it was very interesting to read this book by Susan Cain, which was fun because I borrowed it from the library. A public library book. First time I've taken a book out of the library since I was a little kid. But this book by Susan Cain, Bittersweet, I do recommend it. She's not an objectivist. If you're an objectivist, you'll find things in there to disagree with. But good stuff and a good conversation we had on Thursday. And then on Friday, we continued with James Valiant to talk about Keeping It Real, the book by Leonard Peikoff.
Yes.
Collection of his Q&As. And we kind of carried over the subject from the previous week. We talked about Ayn Rand's personal courage. And this week we gave more examples of courage versus fear. Definitely worth a listen if you do ask me. And even if you don't ask me, worth a listen. So that was fun. And when I talk about the infinite now, all I mean is, well, I've asked the question before. I don't know, maybe you can answer this one for me in the chat, because I'm still working on it. And the question is this. In fact, it's on my Post-it note for the week, so I'll hold it up. How long is now?
As opposed to How Soon Is Now by the Smiths.
That's true. Great song by the Smiths. How long is now? And what the hell are you talking about?
It depends on your the value context of that moment and your focus, I think.
That's part of
Yes.
it. Right now, this moment, you're listening to the show or watching it on the YouTube or Facebook, taking it in as a podcast later, which is how I always listen to the reruns. Apple Podcasts, but we're on Google Podcasts, Spotify. Find us wherever you like to take in your podcasts. But whatever you're doing right now, you're eating dinner if you're in the East Coast, or you're having lunch if you're on the West Coast, or you're getting ready for bed if you're in the UK, wherever you are right now, this moment, you're listening to my voice where you're at. And you can elevate your sense of mindfulness. You can really even close your eyes and get into this moment and feel your body, feel your ears, feel your senses and what you're taking in, and the distractions, the other things that are on your mind, or other sounds that are playing in the background, other things that are happening. You can take a moment and really feel how aware you are. And if you do that, you also get a sense of time. That this moment has a certain persistence. You think of the Salvador Dali painting, The Persistence of Time. Time has persistence. The moment, this moment, right now, can't be infinitely short. So we know from Blaise Pascal, if it was infinitely short, it would have no content. But no, we feel a persistence of time. This moment seems to last a couple seconds. It's fleeting. 10 seconds from now, you might have a whole different thought. But it's not zero. And I'm always asking that question, how long is now? Because I find by focusing on it, I can change it. That I can become not just more mindful, but more timeful, more aware of now, and I can extend it out to where instead of feeling like it's a split second long, it's a few seconds long. And when I think about joy and suffering, I can change how I respond, and I can feel more joy just by expanding my time horizon. And I can deal with suffering better just by changing the way that I'm mindful of it. So when we talked about love and death, well, this afternoon, a friend of ours who we know remotely, we haven't met in person yet, but somebody in the objectivist community, and somebody who's rather heroic, but is facing right now a very difficult part of his life, having to let his career go and deal with medical issues, and we've hospiced friends of ours, and we've dealt with our own physical challenges, stuff a lot worse than bad allergies.
Yeah.
And that ability to control, not just how mindful you are, how present, how focused you are, but even your time sense, I think is enormously valuable. If you've never thought about it, and if you do any kind of mindful practice or yoga or just sitting in not formal meditation, but just quiet moments. If you do any of the morning routines that we've talked about, sitting in silence for a moment, I think the ability to be in control of that is enormously valuable. And as we said when we talked about Sam Harris, you can do that. You can change those states, if not by an act of will, then by changing the environment, changing your posture, changing the music, changing your movement. We talked about how dance can put you in that life is an end in itself state of mind where you feel unified. It's not a separate you, always second-guessing everything you do. So when I talk about the infinite now, to me, the persistence of time, the fact of being able to take in this moment as more than just a split second. How many seconds? Well, if you keep dividing them, the answer is it's infinite. And in that sense, now is all there is. You plan for your future and you execute your plans. So when the future happens, it's the future you want. And you harvest the past, both for your happy memories and for the wisdom you gain from your experiences. So the future matters because you have to plan for it. The past matters because it's a gold mine. But all there really is right now. This is where you live. Right now, this is where you are. This is the stuff. And this is all there will ever be is right now. It's why you want to plan. It's why you care about the future, is because the future is coming, and it's coming fast. I always say yesterday, today was tomorrow, and tomorrow, today will be yesterday. Stealing a line from George Harris's song, Ding Dong, Ding Dong. But it's true. Yesterday, today was tomorrow. So right now you're living with whatever you did yesterday, whatever you planned for the future. Doesn't mean you should always live in the future and not live in the moment. It just means you've got to be mindful of that. The whole trick there is to enjoy the things you do to get ready for the future. Make those an end in themselves as well as giving you a great future. And the other half of that is tomorrow, today will be yesterday. So whatever you're doing right now, you want to be able to look back on it and say, that was a day that was not wasted. That was a day that was an end in itself. That was a good day. And that's what I mean by the infinite now, is just being able to be here now.
Yeah, there are ways in which to be more, for me anyway, this is for me, I should write this down on the list, but there are certain things that make you perceive time as going more slow. For instance, if you're walking or if you're exercising, that can make time slow down because you're dealing with something that is not that you're exerting. In other words, you're exerting your physical exercise and everything. There's also ways in which you can, like for instance, if you have a automatized routine, say like if you're in the shower, for instance, or you're brushing your teeth, or you're doing the dishes, or you're doing the laundry, or you're cleaning the house, do it in a different way that you normally don't do it. So mix it up. So, shampoo your hair later on instead of doing it first, for instance. So there's ways to kind of slow down time and to kind of make you appreciate what you're doing, so it's not so automatic. So yeah, mix it up. There's while you were talking, Robert, there was a few things that I learned by myself when I was a young girl. Things that I would do to kind of put myself in a kind of a meditative moment and just enjoy the moment. One was, we had a ceiling fan, and I would lay on the floor and look up at the ceiling fan and just watch the fan blades go round and round. And I really enjoyed doing that for some reason. But there's also, looking at the second hand of a clock, either analog or digital, and just looking at it as the seconds tick by, noticing how you're breathing with the rhythm of the seconds ticking by, and feeling the length of time a minute takes. And I don't know, for me that kind of gives me a feeling of there's more that I can do in a minute than I think I can, and that I'm a bit more powerful than I think I am, and I can use this minute to my advantage. And also I can kind of notice that I'm breathing and being, and time is passing, but I'm noticing how I am if I'm just focusing on the time. Anyway, so there's a couple things, interesting stuff.
Yes, and good stuff in the chat. Incidentally, Jim actually reminds me, corrects me, that the Dali painting is not called The Persistence of Time, even though it does include all the drooping clocks. It is The Persistence of Memory.
Right.
Is the name of the painting.
That's right.
So, sorry about that, folks, if you went to look that one up. Curiously enough, Narendra says, a friend joked, every atheist is theist. Every theist is atheist. Now, I understand that every theist is an atheist, in the sense that every theist that I know, because I don't know any of the really crazy ones, they actually live in reality. They live as if what's in the Bible isn't true. I don't know anybody who actually lives as if there was an omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient being out there watching every single thing that they do and judging them based on biblical morals. I don't know anybody who lives their life that way. No, they live by kind of a common sense, sort of American church, the church of common sense idea. They try not to lie, they try not to sin, and they have the excuse that we're all sinners, we have original sin, and therefore we just do the best you can and confess on weekends. So in that sense, yes, nobody really believes in God. But what I don't understand is this idea that every atheist is theist. I can imagine ways you could interpret that. Well, everybody has morals, and morals, is ought gap. They can't come from reality, something like that. But I'm not buying that. And Andrew says it is always now. That's correct. You just need a clock, and at the top, and I've seen these before. They make them. It just says now. And of course, we wouldn't want anybody to take the hippy-dippy lesson or the biblical lesson of pay no mind for the future, which is actually in the Bible, because the Lord shall provide. But no, we absolutely do want to be long range and broad context. Came up in, I think, Certainty and Happiness, the Leonard Peikoff lecture, where somebody said, well, acting on principle, then doesn't that just come down to being long range and not short range? And Leonard Peikoff actually gave a very short answer. He said, no, because there are all sorts of long-range things that you can do that are anti-principle. And but what I think the questioner, the right answer to the questioner was, it's not long-range, short-range. It's broad context, which includes long-range, but is much more than just a matter of time. It's a matter of scope. And that's why context is different than just short-range, long-range.
Did you address Jim's question about how big is here?
How big is here?
I like that.
It's fun because it doesn't seem like it's the same issue, but it is, because you can sit here and you can change your perceptions.
Yeah.
And I don't mean with coffee or narcotics, but just sit here, and we've done this before. Stand up straight. If you're listening to this and you're sitting down, You know, put your shoulders back, head back. Now don't raise your head way up. You're not trying to cheer yourself up. You're just trying to get more focused. Head back, neck is straight. You notice I tend to slouch, so this is good exercise. Now, look forward, focus as best you can on whatever happens to you right in front of you. Now do this. Open your eyes a little wider. Now that's a weird thing because you're already focused. When you open your eyes wider, what happens? You feel a little more aware. You get a little more side vision, a little less tunnel vision. You can feel the room. You can see the room. You have a sense of you in the room. Now also do that with your tactile senses, with your other modalities. Feel your fingers. Feel wherever your hands are. Feel your arms. Feel the kinesthetics, however your legs are positioned right now. Not your pants on your legs, although that's part of it, but your muscles. And right now, feel all of those. And I could take you through a 5-minute version of this, where you would suddenly feel really present in the room right now, and you would also feel connected to everything in the room. So the question of how big is here is just like the question of how long is now. It depends. Depends on how big you want to make it.
Apollo Zeus says, project laser beams from your eyes.
That's the next step. Project the laser beams from your eyes, and the steam coming out of your ears fills the room with fog. You so silly. The heck?
Quick question from Steven. What do you think of the Wonder Years? I don't remember it.
Don't remember it either. I don't know if I've ever watched it. Seemed like a charming show. It just wasn't on my radar.
I do know the recent news of the boy who actually grew up in that turned out to be not a nice person as an adult, but
oh no,
I know it's sad. But
you saw that with a lot of child stars, because again, I talked about this with rock stars. Sometimes they go off the rails, or movie stars. There's nothing to keep them on the rails. They don't see reality, because every time reality would say, oh, well, don't drive your car 100 miles an hour, or because you'll get speeding tickets and eventually crash, or don't take drugs, or don't. There's none of that is there.
There's no differentiation between the man-made and the metaphysical, and there's everybody's around them telling them, yes, you can do that.
Yeah, it's like being surrounded by yes men, except also fixers who fix every bad thing you do.
Ugh.
There's just no reason to behave yourself unless you're really, really well grounded in the facts of reality, and your ethics are well established, and you're already somebody who acts on principle. If you haven't heard it yet, you've got to hear or read the chapter in OPAR, but listen to Leonard Peikoff's lecture, Why Should One Act on Principle? Most of you already know it, and you're already doing that, but if you ever had any question about, why shouldn't I just be pragmatic? Why shouldn't I just be short range, short context, look at every situation and say, what can I get away with? Love that.
Project laser beams from your eyes.
Yes, you learn that you shouldn't project laser beams from your eyes unless you have a principled reason to do it. And there you go.
Sorry.
Unless you're a really Superman.
I was going to say, I know it's kind of going over the hour now, but
the hell, this is going to be like a 15-minute episode.
I know, it's about a half-hour episode. No more than that.
No more than that.
So
it's the chat. I love the chat.
Yeah, it's a great chat. Thank you guys. And I just remember this kind of goes back to what we were talking about on the Leonard Peikoff appreciation, keeping it real on Friday. And one of the questions, which was kind of covered but not so much, was about performance and how it is that you can practice something just perfectly over and over again, and then once you get in front of a crowd and you got the adrenaline pumping, that all of a sudden you start
thinking,
overthinking it.
Yeah, you think, I've really got to do it the good this time, so let me think about what I'm doing. Instead of letting your muscle memory do what it's got to do.
The fact that you're in front of an audience and you see them right in front of you, not like this quite, but although I know you're out there, you start becoming self-conscious, and you start kind of thinking in terms of, how do other people see me? And then you start... Then you get out of your flow state. You get out of your performance state, and you lose your muscle memory, and that's interrupted. However, I did, my last performance, I had a wonderful moment where I was completely in my muscle memory flow state, dancing flamenco, and I just had this moment of, wow, this is actually happening right now, and this is my performance. This is not practice. I'm so happy this is going so well. And it was just a quick moment of that,
Yep.
of being conscious.
Yeah, it's fun. You can watch
that
yourself
heightened
without second guessing
consciousness.
yourself.
Yeah, that heightened consciousness. Just love it. Woohoo!
Yeah.
It's like how big is what was the question again? How big is here? That's how big it is. It's pretty big, so it's great.
Now we got to wrap up because Andrew's making me hungry. He says, I can't believe I caught some part of this live. He usually listens after the fact. He says, buttered corn on the cob and greasy fried chicken and all. Now I want fried chicken. Now we got to wrap up because I got to go find some fried chicken. But before I do, one quick tip. Since we talked about performance, men, let's talk about performance. No, since we talked about performance and the fact that if you are a dancer, a musician, if you're in sports, if you're a football player, soccer, whatever it is, there is that fact that you automatize, you get muscle memory, you do certain things that you can't do if you're going to think consciously about, for example, every note on the piano that you play. You've got to practice. You've got to practice. You've got to automatize it. And then you get out in front of an audience and you second guess yourself and you start thinking, I better think about what I'm doing because this needs to be really good. And that's why it falls apart. And we talked about that on Friday, but here's the other thing that you need to know. Because you're relying on muscle memory, because you're relying on your past practices, because you're relying on what you did in the practice room, you have got to get out in front of an audience to practice. It's why some great musicians you read about, Joshua Bell performed in a subway station, or some great pianist or violin player or musician shows up, and the greats don't need to do that because they've played in public so many times, but you do, I do. Because the other thing that happens is we're relying on muscle memory, we're relying on what we did in the practice room, but when we're not in the practice room, when we're out in front of an audience, even if we don't care about the audience, even if we're not stage shy, it's a different atmosphere. It's a different feeling. And trying to play the guitar the way I did in practice, it just doesn't feel the same. It's just different energy in the room. So definitely if you're a musician, if you're a dancer, if you are sports, whatever it is, if you can get in front of, it doesn't have to be a big crowd, but just friends, family, a park, wherever it is, one of my tips for you is definitely practice. Stephen knows about this, because he's in Toastmasters, and Mary Aline and a bunch of you are doing Toastmasters. It's a great idea, because if you're going to go somewhere and give a speech that's not in Toastmasters, if you gave that speech in front of that room of people, it's not just great because they can critique you, but it's also great because the energy is different than if you did it alone in your room. And when you get out on stage in front of a large crowd, you're like, I've done this. I've already done this with the 12 people in my Toastmasters group. So, bit of a tip for you there. I could go on, but I won't. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say this. Show notes for this episode will be added to the description of each one of these YouTube and Facebook videos after the fact. I already posted them in one of the threads on Facebook because they were asked for. Within 5 to 10 minutes right after the show. My allergy medicines are kicking in. If you have suggestions for future shows, please let us know what they are. You'll find a link to the 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir Facebook group at robertnasir.com. If you go to robertnasir.com, what else are you going to find there? A whole bunch of stuff. But the best thing is you will find links to patreon.com/robertnasir and paypal.com/robertnasir, where you can give a financial contribution to this show if you want to support it. If you've got money you're waiting to burn, money to burn, give it to us. Thank you so much. Seriously, thank you to the people who already do that. You are one of the reasons why we keep doing this, even on a day when I'm on double antihistamines and I'm challenged to even think straight.
Yes.
And with that said, we wish you success. We wish you every success. Those of you who are facing challenges, and you know who you are because you're on planet Earth, those of you who are facing hardships, and some of you are facing ones that are much harder than most of us, we wish you every success. We wish you the peace of mind that comes from knowing you are here now. And whether here now means 50 more years or 5 more years or 5 more months or an infinite lifetime, because life extension is right around the corner. Whatever it is what it is. You are here now. We are grateful for that. We hope you've enjoyed this time. We'll do it again next Sunday, and I'll be off the allergy meds by then because these bad allergy, they never last that long. In the meantime, You have our respect. You have our admiration. You have great taste in podcasts.
Yes, you do.
And you have our love.